I'm going to assume that all is working and you're going to let me know otherwise, so I'm just going to begin. Here's a woman who writes and says, I have a friend who is now frustrated because she is attracting older men. She also judges them if they're not very bright. So I respond, so she breaks down how she is planning on or has responded to her friend. And she says, older. I tried to explain that an older man might be more mature. I love it when we try to rationalize what we've got. Might be more mature and able to love her. And then she says, hey, I was grasping at straws. Number 2, mental capacities. She's not all that bright herself, but I have no inclination to explain that. Like attracts like an offender, so I simply nodded my head on this one. That was probably a good idea. How do you explain to somebody that stupid attracts stupid? I'd like to have been there if you'd tried that one. 3, she's also a large pear shape and homely. Yeah, I'd like to have been there when you explained that too. I'm trying to build her confidence, so I don't want to bring up that she might be attracting older men because younger ones are looking for someone more attractive. Yes, this would have been a difficult explanation. So, I would just keep it simple. It's pretty hard to explain to somebody that you're getting older men because younger men are looking for somebody who's smarter and prettier. That would be a tough explanation. So, she's wondering why she's attracting men with this flaw or that flaw. You're not going to win with that explanation, and or trying to explain that. It's a waste of time. So, it's kind of like it is in any relationship. You can live with it and like it, or you can live with it and hate it, or you can leave the trying to attract men game entirely. So, I'd say something like, you're right. There are flaws in these men. There are going to be flaws in all men. There always will be in any kind of partner. So you can spend the rest of your life wondering why they have flaws. What a waste of time. Or you can pick them to death because they have flaws. Or you can ask whether you're willing to live with the flaws. And what kind of flaws and which flaws you're willing to accept. Welcome to the real world. And honey, you've got flaws too. So, what are you willing to live with? And if you want to pick flaws for the rest of your life, then you're going to weed all men out and you'll be single. And if that's what you wanted to do, which is stay single, you're welcome to do that. I mean, that's entirely up to you, because that's one of the options. Some people do choose to do that. You don't have to be in a long-term, exclusive, committed relationship to be happy. And it's one of your choices. But if you're going to sit back and go, but, and pick it, everybody who comes along, then you're going to be single. And you just need to recognize that. So, your choice. But that's where you're headed. So, identify what you're willing to live with, broaden your base of acceptability, and see what happens. That's all. If indeed you want to be in a committed relationship. End of discussion. But why you're attracting this, and all the time that you're looking for men, of course, you want to be constantly improving who you are, which of course is going to improve the quality of partner you attract. We're always looking to do that, and you'll learn more about how you can do that by reading the material that's in Real Love and Dating, improving the kind of discussions that you have with men as you go out on dates, as you interact with them in any kind of environment. Again, those are the kind of things that you'll find in Real Love and Dating. Many women attract really crummy partners because of the kind of behaviors that they exhibit when they're around men. So the entire book, Real Love and Dating, is about that kind of thing. So you can learn a lot more about those kind of behaviors as you read that book. For some time, change of subject, I've been communicating with a woman who is married to a remarkably selfish man. I know both of them. And he really is difficult. He's difficult to live with. He'd be difficult for a spouse. He's a selfish person. And she has been far less than satisfied with this arrangement for a very long time. Decades, actually. They have adult children. And she has complained about his selfish behavior on, let's say, many occasions. Hundreds, actually, that I've listened to personally. And I'm sure I'm not the only person that she has shared his behavior with. And finally, on one occasion, I said to her in an email, have you ever tried unreservedly, and I emphasize this, unreservedly, unconditionally loving him without holding anything back, for no reason, without expecting anything from him in return, without noting his flaws and faults and mistakes, without complaining about him, without being bitter when he doesn't return anything, without keeping score, unreservedly, unconditionally loving him, even for brief periods of time? Have you ever done this? Even though he would just use it to his advantage, because of course she would immediately come back with, well, but he would just take it and use me. Yeah, I know. People who are selfish do that. People who are selfish use everybody around them. I know that. And that's why it's called unconditional love. This experiment would involve loving him even though he would do that. So, have you ever really tried doing that with him? Because until you have, you haven't really tried real love with him. And she said, and now I'm reading, I've given this question serious thought, and I've wanted so badly to be able to answer yes, even though she's been practicing real love for years. But I can't. There's one word here that prevents me from doing that, and it's unreservedly. Somewhere in all of my, quote, loving, I've always had an agenda, always an element of fear as well. What if has always been a part of my thinking. What if I do this and he doesn't do that? Or what if I give him this and he does that? That kind of thing. So this morning I was talking to, and we'll call him Fred, and I was once again pointing out to him how he could be more loving toward me. After we finished talking, and it was a peaceful conversation, the thought came to me, why don't you just be toward him what you're asking of him? What would happen if you just started giving him what it is that you're asking of him for yourself, unreservedly? You want support from him, well, so support him. You want him to care about your feelings, care about his feelings. You want him to make you first, so make him first. Really, no strings attached. Just give what it is that you want, not to get anything in return. There was so much peace and joy surrounding this thought that I felt excited to begin, and I have already. There were no what-ifs. He was upstairs brushing his teeth, preparing to go out, and I leaned over and kissed his elbow. Silly, it just came to me to do that, and he stopped and said simply, thanks. But I felt in my heart at that exact moment that he felt the real love that I was offering. I didn't have an agenda or an attachment to the action. I don't feel like I'd be used by doing this. I don't feel like I'd be a doormat either. It just feels right. Amazing. To wrap this up, I just want to say that I may forget this moment. I hope I don't. I don't think that I will. It feels too right, too real. But in case I do, I'd welcome any reminders of how I'm feeling this day. I feel strong, and perhaps for the first time with him, I feel ready to love him unconditionally. It's funny, I'm getting it that doing so has nothing to do with him. We spend so much time hoping that we'll get something from other people that it's just very difficult for us to imagine that nothing's going to change until we initiate the change. Somebody at some point, when there's a cycle of selfish getting and protecting behaviors for long enough, somebody has to initiate the change in the behaviors, because these getting and protecting behaviors just spiral straight into the toilet. Somebody has to make the change. Somebody has to give unreservedly and without conditions. And if we expect our partners to make the change, who almost invariably know less about real love than we do, we're going to wait till hell freezes over. So at some point, it has to be us. It has to be. And we have to give with no thought of return, or we're cooked. And that means we give while our partners are being ugly. It means we give while our partners are giving nothing in return, or while we're feeling used. That's what makes it unconditional. There just isn't another way to do this. There just isn't. Here's somebody who says, I'm always concerned about how the rest of the world sees me. My need to be seen, this is a live question, in a positive light or in any light is always there running in the background. There have been a few times in my life where I was so focused, hang on a sec, on the person I was with or the event that I was in, that I no longer sensed everyone else. I know that in most of those cases I was trading imitation love at a very high rate. But lately, especially with my son, I can be so focused on his happiness that the world melts into the background. Is this what real love can give me? Should I be focusing on someone else's happiness to the level that I no longer worry about everyone else? As we focus on the happiness of somebody else, then we lose our own selfishness. As long as we focus on somebody else's happiness without wanting anything in return. Because if we focus solely on somebody else's happiness and we expect something back, then that becomes just pathologic codependence. So you can't leave out the not wanting something back. Because if we simply say, as some people do, that love is focusing on somebody else's happiness more than on our own, that can become a really sick, twisted form of love. Because you always have to have in the background whether or not we become subsumed, whether we become lost in the process. You're always you can focus entirely on your son's happiness, but you would never become focused on his happiness to your detriment, where it would harm you. Where you, for example, would give to your son, and, for example, in the process become so depleted that you couldn't give to anybody else. That wouldn't be real love. That would be stupid. A codependent would do that. A codependent would need somebody's approval or love to where they would give to that person and give and give and give and give to the point that they became so depleted that they were no longer able to take care of themselves, no longer able to give to anyone else around them, no longer able to think clearly or rationally. That's not wise giving. That's losing oneself. That's losing one's thought processes. That's a sick kind of giving. It's not real love. In real love, you don't ever lose your ability to think clearly. You are constantly giving consciously, freely, clearly, whereas codependents don't. They lose their ability to think clearly. And in the back of their minds, they are always giving with a thought that they're going to get something in return, even if they don't realize it in the moment. Because eventually, they always expect a payoff, even if they don't see it. Here's somebody who says, I just have some questions about the relationship that I'm in with my girlfriend and some things that I've been feeling. I've been reading the Real Love and Dating book, but I'm not done yet. I feel like I get so jealous so easily, and I don't know why. This is a hard thing to hear, but it's still the truth. Once we understand how relationships work, it's much less confusing, and then we're able to respond to people better. So keep this in mind as I answer your question. If you felt sufficiently unconditionally loved, you would not be getting jealous. The fact that you're jealous already demonstrates that the relationship that you have with your girlfriend is not based on unconditional love. People who have relationships based on unconditional love don't get jealous, because jealousy is all based on counting. It's all based on keeping score. It's all about who gets enough of what they want and who's not getting enough of what they want, and who's taking and who's giving. Jealousy is all about disappointment and bitterness. So if you're experiencing that, your relationship is not based on unconditional love. So I'm telling you ahead of time that your relationship is lacking in real love, which is going to help you understand the rest of what's going on. Then you say, this is new for me. I'm not normally a jealous guy, but lately I have been, and I don't like that feeling. The older we get, the more desperate for attention we get, the more that what used to be enough imitation love for us wears off and becomes insufficient. So sure, whereas you didn't used to get jealous because you could just move on and get imitation love from whoever you wanted to get it from. This girl didn't satisfy you? Heck with her. Throw her aside and get another one. But the older we get, the faster imitation love wears off. And now, when you see a girl that you're with starting to pay attention to somebody else, you become increasingly desperate and start to feel jealous. That jealousy is just desperation as imitation love wears off. That's all it is. Jealousy is just desperation because you're becoming empty and afraid. Easy to explain. And perhaps you have found somebody who gives you attention in an especially effective way. She's especially good at giving you imitation love, and you don't want to lose her. Then you continue. She seems to get along better with guys than she does with girls, and that really bothers me. She'll text other guys who are single right in front of me. I'm glad that she doesn't hide these things from me, but I know how guys are, and they'll try to sweet talk her away from me. And then I feel pretty helpless. You are helpless, so live with it. See, most of us spend our whole lives trying to change what is. You are helpless. If she wants to move on and find another guy, she will. And when you can learn to live with that, your life's going to be a lot easier. All you can do is love her the best you can and wait to see if that's enough to retain her as a partner, as opposed to what everybody else does, which is to try to keep her as a partner, to throw enough chains around her to make her stay. I can tell you ahead of time, if you want to know. I can go ahead and spoil the rest of the story for you if you want, because it's not a mystery. If you try to chain her to you, you will lose. So if you want, you can really try to work hard at making that happen for the next several months for the rest of your relationship. Or I can just go ahead and ruin the end of the novel for you and tell you that if you try to do that, you will be very unhappy and you'll lose in the end. I can tell you how the novel goes. Don't do this. You love your partner as well as you can, and then you just wait to see what happens. And if that's not good enough for her, then bid her a fond farewell, and see if the door hits her in the backside as she leaves, if she does. You don't want to keep somebody with you who wants to go. Let her go. So, the minute that you try to buy her attention or keep her by manipulating her, you're doomed. Because what you're getting isn't real love anyway. And you don't want a relationship that's not based on real love. You will be miserable in that kind of relationship. And yet, that's what we do. We establish a commerce based on imitation love, and then we wonder why we're not happy. We're just about as dumb as bricks. But it's because that's what we've been taught to do from the time we were little kids. Then you continue. I just don't know why I'm so jealous to the point where I can't even stand it. I've never been this jealous before. You've learned to live on imitation love. This imitation love is now leaving you, and you're going crazy because it's all you've ever known, and now it's being taken from you. It's real easy to understand the source of jealousy, like no-brainer. Also, I feel like she brings up these guys in conversation on purpose just to see what my reaction is going to be. And, like a typical dumb male, I give her exactly what she wants. Yes, you do. And then you're not happy, and she's not truly happy either. No game played on the field of death will ever lead to happiness for anyone. But in the absence of real love, we only know the field of death. Then everybody's miserable for every minute, and in the end, we're dead. Gee, now, there's a description of real misery, isn't it? You hate every minute you're playing, just about, and then you die. Ugh, yuck. I could be totally wrong, you say, but I feel that she somewhat enjoys seeing me get jealous and constantly asks questions about all these guys that she speaks so highly of. It's like if I get jealous, then she interprets that as, oh, he really cares about me. Well, yeah, because she's playing the same game you are. You're playing a game that leads to imitation love because it's all you've ever known, and she's playing a game of imitation love because it's all she's ever known. When you get jealous, she gets a feeling of what? Praise, because she interprets that as being more worthwhile, and most especially, power over you. I mean, it's just like she has the strings of a puppeteer and just plays you like a doll. And because you don't know any different, you dance on the stage. And with real love, you can play an entirely different game. It's actually not a game at all. It's fun. It's a way to live instead of dying. And here you are, rather than living, you're just protecting your property, which is what jealousy is. And what a yucky way to conduct a relationship. Protecting property? Ugh. But I feel like, you say, if I don't get jealous, that she's thinking, why doesn't he care about me talking to other guys? I hope I'm wrong about this. Any help you can give me on this one, I'd appreciate it. It's all field of death. So the solution is simple. You simply tell the truth about yourself. You be who you really are. And then you attract women who genuinely care about you and accept you for who you really are. And you let all the rest go. So if a woman can't accept you and care about you and stay with you for who you really are, you don't care. You don't want to stay with a woman like that, no matter what else she offers. It doesn't matter how entertaining she is, or attractive she is, or sexually alluring she is, because all that is garbage compared to her ability to care about you unconditionally. You don't want to attract any of those other qualities if you have to pay for it by being anything other than who you are. So finish reading the book that you've started, Real Love and Dating. Don't settle for anything less than real love. It's worth the wait, really, no kidding. You play any other game and you die. And I don't know, do you really want to die while you're dating? And if you play this game and you actually succeed in the game, you win, if you can call it winning, on the field of death, and you manage to actually trap this woman and marry her. Do you know what it's going to be like for the rest of your life? You're going to trap somebody who's going to end up resenting you forever, and you're going to have the marriage from hell, which is what most people end up having. And they're going to wonder what went wrong. And what went wrong was what they did during the time that they were dating. It all starts from the very beginning. So Don't do it. It all starts from the beginning. Here's somebody who says, at what point with dating, engagement, or marriage is it no longer inappropriate? Whoa, too many negatives. Here's 3 negatives in a row. Is it no longer inappropriate to not go through the file cabinet? That's 3 negatives. Through the file cabinet and discard notes written by the distant and in some cases deceased old romantic relationships. I'm just going to ignore all the negatives. If you're married, there's no reason to go through notes from old relationships. Can't imagine why you'd want to do that. But if you feel a compulsion to do that, no problem. The only thing I would suggest is that if you're going through old notes from old relationships, to pitch them, which is, probably a great idea. It's kind of like getting rid of old garbage. Then one thing I would do is, because I get rid of old junk in my house, and as I'm going through old file folders, I find all kinds of old stuff, old journal notes. I throw out old stuff of all kinds of material. But if I were to come across old notes from old girlfriends, old whatever, because I found old stuff like that, if I were going through a pile of it and I were intentionally going through what I knew were old notes from old girlfriends, then I would tell my partner what I was doing. That's all. I would just say, sweetie, I'm going through a pile of old notes, only so that if my partner came into the room and found me going through a pile of old notes, she wouldn't wonder, what's he doing? And if I found myself at all going through a pile of old notes from old girlfriends and I found myself romanticizing, thinking about old girlfriends in anything other than a healthy way, then I'd quit doing it. That's all I'd suggest. No advice more clever than that. Keeps it pretty simple. Here's somebody who says, I have a question I need some understanding on. I've been trying to be quiet and really become more aware. What I have noticed is that in the moment that I am with someone, seeing them and loving them, that I am focused on them and really accepting and loving them to the best of my ability, which is a great condition to be in. I am not thinking of what I'm going to say next or how to fix them or anything, but sometimes if we're together with other people, like in a group meeting, and that person will bring up how helpful it was that I was talking to them, I feel joy for them, but also a part of me goes, oh, cool, Susie, like if that was her name, you did a cool job. And then in that moment, I think how well I did loving them. And I start, wondering if, maybe if I did it, just for the praise. I guess what I'm asking is, can I feel joy and happiness when someone else has felt seen, accepted, and loved by me, or is that just a form of imitation love? Well, I would answer that in 2 ways. In the first place, as we do things for other people, it's very common for us to do things with mixed motivations. So it's very common that I might do something for somebody and my motivation would be not entirely pure. So I may do something 70% for them, but 30% I did it hoping I'd get noticed. And that's really common. So that doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't mean that I shouldn't do things for people until my motivation is pure, or, my goodness, many of us would never do anything for people at all. The idea is, I mean, that would be as silly as saying, I'm never going to exercise until I can exercise perfectly. Until I can run flawlessly, I'll never run. Until I can speak flawlessly, I'll never open my mouth. Until I can love perfectly unconditionally, I'll never try to love. That's just insane. So, as we are attempting to engage in loving acts, it's just very common that our love for people will be tainted. So, some of it will be unconditional and some of it will be for ourselves. So, what do? You just kind of note what part of it is selfish. And so, afterward you go, there's a little bit of selfishness in there. There's a little bit of there that I was kind of, and you just kind of note to yourself as you were talking to somebody and helping them, you kind of note to yourself, a little bit of me, maybe not physically, but inside my head there was a little bit, my eyes, my emotional eyes were rotating around in my head, looking around to see if people were looking at me, to see how cool I was. You just note it. Just to learn, so that maybe the next time you might be a little less likely to do it. You just note it, and then maybe in a group you might mention it. You might say, I noticed the last time I helped somebody, I was kind of hoping people would say something about how wise I was, how loving, how sweetly compassionate I was. It's from moments like that we feel more unconditionally accepted and become more capable of being unconditionally loving the next time. So we note it. But now, in addition, there will be times where we might have been absolutely unconditionally loving, like you just described. There may be times when we love purely. Let's say that you helped somebody and you had no thought for anything for yourself in return at all. And you loved somebody for 3 solid minutes, unconditionally, purely. There was no taint of personal gain, whatever. But then afterward, 20 minutes later, somebody says, wow, I was there when you loved Fred, and that was amazing. Now, afterward, this is a separate experience. That's unrelated to when you were loving Fred. And they say, that was really incredible. Now, in this separate, later experience, you go, wow. Well, why, thank you. Why, thank you very much. Now you're having a moment of pride. Well, that doesn't taint your first experience. That was pure. Now, later, you're getting a kick out of it. So, the one is not related to the other. So, those you have to kind of figure out on your own. So, you can turn a real love experience into a later imitation love experience. And we can have combined real love and imitation love experiences. And how do you figure it out? Practice and honesty. Here's a business question. In the service arena, this is somebody who works for a moving company that goes in and moves families, companies with moving vans and the like. We know that even though a company can have a well-trained staff, good quality ratings, proper support, everything they need to perform the task well, things just sometimes go wrong. Sometimes it's the fault of the company. At other times, the customer affects the outcome by their expectations or interference. My dilemma is I know that we aren't always perfect. I know that our intention is to offer the highest level of service possible, but due to many variables, we don't always succeed. So what's the best way to deal with the customer's expectations? How do I close the sale honestly? I try to give the information. Our staff has been trained 120 to 140 hours before they ever go into the home. They receive on-the-job training as well. Our drivers train in our facility, moving furniture in hard-to-manage areas of a mock home. They learn how to load the van as well. But too often now, I'm experiencing a lot of backlash in terms of the customer's expectations. So, how do you close the sale? You tell them exactly about the training of your movers. You tell them about what you offer. And that's what you do. You say, here's what we offer. Here's what we expect of our movers. And you have no hesitation about saying what you offer in terms of your standards and your training. Everybody knows that nobody perfectly lives up to standards and training. Then you deal with mistakes when they're made. So you say, here's what we offer, here's the standards, here's the training, here's the blank. I mean, when Ford sells a car, when Toyota sells a car, they say, we sell a car with a warranty of blank. We sell a car that has 4 wheels, and we sell a car with a drive shaft, and we sell a car with blah, blah, blah. They don't say, we sell a car, and by the way, X% of the time, we have a car that's completely screwed up. X% of the time, we have cars that are delivered with faulty mirrors. X% of the, do you understand? You don't advertise what your mistakes are up front, what your mistake rate is. And there's nothing dishonest about that. But then you have to honestly deal with the mistakes when they happen. So when they do happen, then you have to, without any fear, because it sounds like you're having a problem with fear. I mean, I'm getting it as you're writing. You have to fearlessly say, oh, well, our training is this, and our standards are this, and our expectations of our people are this, and it sounds like you didn't get our usual standard of care. So what can we do to correct this? But you don't need to fumble all over yourself and feel bad because you made a promise. You make a promise of what you're going to deliver, and when you don't, you say, oh, well, so let's fix this. But you don't need to hang yourself on a cross because you made a promise. Next question. And you can't be afraid when people confront you with mistakes, because the instant you're afraid, people are confirmed in their belief that they have been victimized. They've not been victimized. Mistakes are simply made. So what? If something goes wrong with your car, Toyota doesn't call you up and go, oh, woe is us, you have been personally victimized. No, they just go, so let's fix the darn thing. So let's take care of it. Next question. What do you think about transferring the principle of can they hear it to sales? Hearing or not hearing creates difficulty for me many times as I sit with a customer for 10 minutes discussing what they expect on our level of service, and they're not hearing a word I'm saying. Also, in terms of telling the truth about my customers to them, how can I become more clear about how far I can go? I'm seeing clearly that when I'm afraid of the customer, even though the customer is literally lying to me or jerking me around to get a better price, I'm hesitant to tell the truth about them. I can see how simply giving information in this circumstance is useful, but I risk alienating a potential customer who I have to say I'm not sure I even want based on their getting and protecting behaviors. I can tell you before I even get to an example that your problem here is being afraid. You're afraid of the customer. The instant you're afraid, the customer can see that you're focused on who. If you're afraid, your focus is on you. And so when you're afraid and you're focused on you, the customer cannot feel like you're focused on their needs. Now, it almost looks like a good thing. When a customer comes at you and goes, wah, 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 and attacks you, the fact that you're afraid almost looks like you're responding to them. But you're really not. You're really responding to you. You're afraid for you. And now you can't help them. So you have to be absolutely fearless or you can't hear them. So, you give an example. In our business, we offer used boxes as a courtesy for customers who book a move with us. I was discussing this with a customer who's paying a lot of money for a high-level move. She asked me if she was going to get a discount because she did not use our used boxes, but she supplied her own cartons. And I said, no, those boxes are available as a courtesy to the customers and are free. But not using them would not mean your price would be discounted. She was upset by this, took it as an affront. That as much as we were charging for her move, we would not offer her a discount. And I can see why she would be confused by that. Because, you offer used boxes, she's not using that, so, why wouldn't she get a discount for that? I came to understand that she believed there's some cost for offering these boxes built into the cost of the move. I tried to explain this to her several ways. She wouldn't hear me. I finally asked my coworker to attempt to explain it to her, which he did. Took several more minutes of explanation, but she finally got it. I could see that she was empty and afraid, and that she was clinging to the idea that there was some innate cost to making the used boxes available. I could see from her defensiveness that she needed to be loved and was having difficulty hearing. I'm telling you, it's your fear that's the problem. The instant you become afraid, she can't hear one thing you have to say. She comes at you going, and as soon as you become afraid and defensive, she's going, this woman's got something to hide. This woman isn't listening to me. When you're afraid, you can't be focusing on her. Whereas if you are completely unafraid and confident. When I deal with people who are in conflict and they come at me with two marriage partners, for example, and these are people who've seen 8, 10, 12 marriage counselors in the past, and they come in screaming and kicking and fighting, all I have to be is absolutely unafraid and say, this is the way it is. And speak as though I'm speaking out of a cloud parting. The conflict's over. We're done. And I can say almost anything because there's no fear. They know that I'm not speaking to defend myself. There are no getting and protecting behaviors. And just by having none of that and by not participating in the conflict, people are going, wow, I want some of that. I want to listen to that. They're willing to listen to somebody who's grounded in that feeling. It's huge. Now, you could abuse that, but somebody who's not using getting and protecting behaviors, somebody who is totally unafraid and not empty, is pretty unlikely to abuse other people and use them. And people know that. We kind of can sense that. That's why they'll listen to you. Really. So that's when you can say things like, and see, it really doesn't matter what you say. Once you're that kind of grounded and unafraid, but that's when you can say, you're paying a lot of money here for a move. So it would seem to make sense that, if you're not using the used boxes, it would seem to make sense that you would get a discount. But let me explain to you why that's not the case. And you explain this in a completely confident way. But because you're paying a premium price for a high-level move, you're getting a number of other advantages, and here they are. And you explain that to her. You get special service in a number of ways. But the used boxes, they're not part of your price. They weren't calculated whether you used them or didn't use them. They are a complete throwaway. They were completely not calculated. They are garbage. It was like we're offering customers garbage. That's what the used boxes are. They are trash out of a dumpster to us. We don't cost them. And now the lady's going, okay, I get it. But as opposed to, I see that you're upset. Well, I don't know how to explain this to you. As soon as you're like that, she doesn't hear a word you have to say. And that's what happened. And so you handed her over to somebody who was not afraid, and she got it. So it's about the fear. Here's this person who says, that's my fear, that they will want some compensation for us not meeting the standards. If I offered this to every customer who felt we didn't make the grade, my boss would fire me because consistently the customer would ask for monetary credit. And see, you're motivated by fear. You have to decide, I know so much about this. I am so confident in what I do that I'm going to go in here and I'm going to explain this with such power that these customers are going to be satisfied with me. Rather than, I'm so afraid if I don't do this right, I'm going to be fired. See the difference? One motivation is, I am going to see to the needs of the customer. I am going to make this customer happy. That's a positive motivation. The other is, I better do this right or I'm going to be fired. See the difference in the motivation? Gee whiz. One is fear-based, and the other is based on, I am going to care about the customer. The same is true in coaching, in real love. You bring in a couple, and if your motivation is, oh boy, I really hope I don't offend anybody. If that's your goal as a coach, you're dead. Don't ever invite anybody to coach them. Don't ever invite anybody to make a difference in their life. And I'm not mocking you. I'm just going, you're done. If your motivation is fear, what you don't want to do, you're not going to help anybody. Whereas if your motivation is, I'm going to do whatever it takes to help them, and I'm confident that I can because I have the tools and the ability to help them, you will make transformative changes in their lives. Not a false confidence, but out of experience and faith, you know that you really do. So she continues. She says, the fear is there because they complain after the fact, and I feel like I can't do anything then. And the more you're afraid, the more complaints you will get after the fact. Then your fear increases and you become more afraid. This is a complete reframing of the way you live, of doing things because you're confident that you can do this. Then when you get the occasional complaint afterwards, you go, yeah, well, some people can't be helped. But you decide, I can do this, and I'm not going to be motivated by fear. And if that's still an insufficient explanation, you keep asking questions. Here's another question. On Sunday, our daughter, I've changed the names, so I hope I changed them all. Sometimes I screw up and halfway through I reveal, no I don't, so far, because I do a word search usually. On Sunday, our daughter Susie, who is 11, was playing outside with her friend Melissa, who lives next door. Mark, my husband, and I decided to do an errand that would take about 2 hours. Susie wanted to continue playing and stay home while we went out to do these errands. So I told Susie to check with her dad to see if he's okay with her playing outside, keep playing outside, while we went out to do the errands. Susie already babysits for the child next door and does stay at home by herself in the daylight hours for short periods of time. Melissa, her friend's parents, were home, and so was our other next door neighbor, who also has a spare key to our house. Mark, my husband, got very angry when Susie asked if she could stay home, and Susie started to cry. He threw his hands up, storms out of the room, and says to me, "You decide," in a mean voice. So I gave Susie the extra house key and my cell phone and told her that she could play outside and call us if she had any reason to. About 30 minutes later, she calls and asks if she could play inside of Melissa's house, and I said yes. I told Susie how much I appreciated her calling to ask if she could play inside Melissa's house, and that it was very responsible of her to ask. She didn't just, go into the house and not let us know where she was. Susie is responsible and always asks me if she can go somewhere and doesn't just disappear or anything like that. She also comes home exactly at the time she's supposed to. My question isn't about Susie, it's about Mark. How do we deal with him? He doesn't see that she's responsible and repeatedly criticizes her and picks on her. Was there a better way for me to handle the situation? This type of thing is coming up more and more as Susie is heading into the teen years. So was there a better way to handle it at the time? Probably not. Not at the moment. I mean, once Mark is already mad at her and thrown up his hands and says, "You decide," that's pretty much the end of that. So, you just walk away. Once somebody's mad, you don't say, "Now, do you see that you're being a real butthead here and that you need to handle this differently?" This goes very poorly. So, letting that go was brilliant. But handling it differently for the future, oh yeah. And so this would be a great opportunity for you to discuss it in what I hope you're having, which would be regular couples meetings, which I recommend for everybody. I recommend that every couple have a time that they're discussing how their marriage is going, preferably 15, 20 minutes every night, and for 2 hours every week. If you're not doing that, start. But let's say that you're not. So, sometime when you're not being interrupted, when he's not watching football, when nothing's going on, just say, "Hey, have you got a few minutes?" And then sit down with him when there's no emergency, when nothing's happening, when there's no crisis, and soon, preferably, so that he still remembers the event, and say, "You remember the other day when we went out to run the errands and we left Susie outside?" You don't start off saying, "I don't like how that went." Very few people like having their flaws pointed out right off. And of course you'll say, "Yeah, I remember that." And you say, "How did you think that went?" And most of the time when people have a really negative experience, they will remember it not very well, and they won't be very quick to offer information about how it didn't go well. We like to forget our really bad moments when we show our backsides. That's a Southern expression. Actually, they say it a little differently than that, but and so he might be sort of vague on answering the question. That's fine. And so you say, "Well, it seemed like things were kind of tense for you. You seemed unhappy with how that went." And then if he stays vague, "Well, I don't know," because that's very common answer. You can almost expect that. I don't know. You may have to help him and say, "Well, we left Susie behind, and you seemed very unhappy about doing that. In fact, when Susie came to ask you about staying outside, you raised your voice at her. Try to avoid the word yell, because then he'll become defensive. He'll tend to do that. You raised your voice at her, and she cried." He'll remember that. And then you say, "What I'd like to do is just to talk about how we deal with that kind of responsibility for her, because as she gets older, we'll be dealing with it more. We'll be dealing with it more and more often. Would that be all right with you?" "Well, I guess." You just need to know he's not going to be entirely thrilled about this discussion, so you'll have to lead it along. You just need to know that. He's not going to jump in and go, "I'm so happy you brought this up. Would you agree that she's a pretty responsible child?" And you just need to help him see that she is. And that she responds very badly, we all do, when we're already responsible, to not being trusted. And you need to ask him, how do you feel when you've been responsible and then people don't trust you? He'll get the point. And you just say, look at all the times that we've trusted her and how well she responds to that. So What do you think if we adopt a policy, because I know that your overall goal is to help her to be happier, and that she feels more loved by both of us. So in keeping with her feeling more loved and happy, do you think it might be more productive if we more consistently decided that she were to enjoy the trust and the responsibility of being left at home in circumstances like that, and that we show no resistance to it? Would you be, amenable to that? Would you go along with that? So that you've established a policy between the two of you that you're just going to trust her more often. And you don't need to beat him to death with it. Just, is that it? You've introduced the subject. And I think you'll find that he'll accept that kind of discussion without your going in and beating him up and saying, you shouldn't have raised your voice at her. He's not going to do well with that. You're going to focus on what your future policy will be that will lead to her feeling more loved, trusted, and happy. So you focus on what you're going to do that's going to lead to more positive results. Somebody wrote, I've been involved in real love for a number of years, and I've recently been down. I know that I'm loved, but it just doesn't seem to matter. Much of my being loving is a lie, and my being responsible is usually forced. The thing that concerns me most is that I can feel people moving away from me, which is obviously the opposite of feeling loved, yet I'm fully aware that I'm the one who's doing the pushing away. How would I handle a situation like How I would handle a situation like this in the past would be to remain isolated until the pain became too much, and then find some other organization that promises that I can find inner peace. Looking for anything to cling to, wanting to be taken care of. I've never been, when the going gets tough get going kind of person. You don't need to tell me that I'm acting like a victim. That's only one of the getting and protecting behaviors at work here. I probably just need to be shaken, kicked in the butt, or slapped in the back of the head, but I just can't shake, kick, or slap myself. And, I'm not so sure you do need to be shaken, kicked in the butt, or slapped in the back of the head. In fact, as I listen to you here, what I hear is a flurry of self-accusation, and I ought to be, and like you're saying here, my loving is a lie. And what I'm hearing is the possibility that you may still be earning the love you're getting. If I had a suggestion to make, and I might, it would be to be more calm and trusting and faithful about the love that you're being given, and to do actually less to earn it. To be more trusting that the people that you spend time with are actually loving you, and to trust that what they're giving you is free, and to be quieter and allow them to love you unconditionally, rather than to do anything to make them do it, to do less to make them like you, entertain them, earn their praise. And when I say less, I mean less to get them to do that, but not to do less to connect with them. And there's a difference. Connecting means still calling them, writing them, make teleconference calls and so on, but less while you're doing those things to earn it while you're with them. So more connecting, but less earning, and more trusting. So that's what I'd suggest, and no shaking, kicking, or slapping. So it's been really fun to be with you all, and look forward to seeing you in Phoenix for the parenting seminar in just a few days now, and we'll see you next Tuesday in a week on the conference call, or the video chat, and look forward to that. So until then, we love you tons. We'll see you then. Bye.